Hello, anybody and everybody watching. My name is Colin. This is the Comic Briefing Program. Still once a month we get together and try to talk about what we think are the most impactful or important headlines from geek news around the globe to bring you the most interesting or important headlines. So that's what we're going to try to do, but I'll be honest, last month was a bit of a banger. That being our recap of September was chock full of shit. October was much less spooky, ironically, and much less densely packed with information. So we are still going to have a good time chatting, and it's going to be, I don't know, maybe a little more free-flowing because we have less to get to. And to flow freely, my name is once again Colin, and I am joined by...
I am Jeff. We are recording on Halloween.
Oh, no. Oh, no! Spooky season,
It's
indeed.
spook time, baby.
Hi, I'm Timo, or Chowder, whichever you prefer. This podcast really is just an excuse for us to shoot the shit and make it seem like we're doing something productive.
Yeah, it's what
Which
if
we're not.
what if your what if your friendships were tax deductible? That's the question I like to ask. To that end, I have made 2 attempts to socialize over the last few days. One of which went pretty well,
sorry.
and one of them went just so poorly. Last night, went out with a couple of friends for their birthday dinner. It was chill. Saw some people I haven't seen in a while. Met some new people. Just kind of shot the shit and talked about. Is fine. Is what you expect that to be. I was invited to a Halloween party a couple days prior, and I had a resurgence of my high school level social anxiety to a point where actually 20 minutes in, I went upstairs to the 3rd story of the house beyond the do not cross line and just hid up there until it was time to leave. I was so trapped in my inability to speak with people, and I didn't know how to handle it because it had been so long since that happened. So,
Classic.
So on one hand, I'm excited to talk to you,
Also,
but Jeff, that hat
when-
is triggering me big time, and I might have to leave.
Perfect. Just the way I
Also,
like
people
it.
were going,
Colin,
wow, Colin, that's a terrifying costume, man. Good job. And it's just, he wasn't wearing a costume.
My
that fits
hairline
him.
is just receding. That's the scariest thing of all. But yeah,
His costume this year is Vsauce.
It's what?
Vsauce? You know the guy? Well,
don't.
one of the Vsauce guys.
I do not.
You kind of look like him.
Okay, cool. I get it now. Excellent. Is it weird that I feel guilt when someone else tries to do a bit and I don't have the knowledge to sustain that bit? Like, I feel like I'm the bad guy when that happens. I'm like, oh no, I didn't support their bit.
Sometimes, like, I watch, like,
That's better.
like College Schumer's, like, improv show, and like sometimes the prompts are like these references to things that I don't get, and I'm like, what happens if they get a prompt to something they don't understand? Like,
I mean, that's kind of the gamble you play anytime you play like charades, you know? At least with a game like Fibbage or Jackbox, it's like the game, it kind of counts on somebody to be a dumbass. Like, that's part of the fun. But yeah, I feel like if a game is just pure trivia, some people get pleasure out of watching Jeopardy. I get the most self-conscious wave of emotion because I'm like, I don't know anything. I don't know a single answer to a single question. And I feel like that's most straight-up trivia game shows, which is why we're here to bring you information, because we have so much of it.
We're the most qualified.
I'll be honest. I mean, like, just to kick it off,
we ain't got Lamborghinis, but we got knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, I will say this, though. I guess to kick it
Not
off,
even that.
One thing that we did neglect to mention at the end of last month's summary was, because it happened right as we were recording, was that the WGA strike, after 5 months, came to a close.
Yeah.
That's very important to mention, because now writers are have a deal that protects them from abusive AI, that ensures that they will have adequately staffed writers' rooms, minimum time for people to be working on stuff in pre-production, minimum amount of people on set, like lots of really healthy things that will allow them to make better shows. And I mean, like, that's at this point month-old news at this point, so I don't want to dive too deeply into that. But it I think springboards to a couple of points. And Chowder, the big thing that you were going to talk about, would it happen to be related to Marvel? I'm guessing not, but I'm curious.
It's not the biggest thing, but it was one of the things I want to talk about was involving Marvel
Okay.
and like.
I'll try not to step on all of it then, but this has led to the return of like late night talk shows and stuff like that. You know, your Johns Olivers, your Stevens Colbert are all back sort of in their groove now that they have writers to write their shows. But the actors strike, the SAG-AFTRA strike, is still ongoing, and talks between the AMPTP and SAG-AFTRA have broken down a couple of times to the point where actors are just out there saying like, hey, just kind of got to sit and wait for a deal. You've got folks like George Clooney saying like, hey, we super rich actors, we'll just pay more into the strike fund to make sure everyone gets paid. And then Fran Drescher, president of SAG-AFTRA, is like, thank you, that's very nice, but that's not how this works. Please just continue striking. and so like everyone's just kind of like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And this week is apparently a sort of soft deadline as we are recording this last week of October going into first week of November, because apparently the AMPTP is willing to undergo another round of negotiations for the week and is rumored to say if things don't happen this week, then we're done until January. They're just gonna, kind of like the U.S. Congress frequently does, like, we haven't funded the government.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But I'm a little tired.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Which is, to be fair, since they're all like 90 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to make some comments about Dianne Feinstein, but I feel like there's no way for me to say sell the upside on that without being a monster. So I'm just gonna. I've already said enough, so I'm gonna leave it there. But we are sort of at this weird standstill where a lot of like movies and TV show productions have been delayed because of both strikes. Writer strike began in May. Actor strike began in July, and a lot of what the writers were asking for was the stuff I mentioned: structure around the writers' rooms, certain minimums for pay, for time, for staff number, and protections against AI. And they got all that stuff. Now, there is not a lot of consistency around the rumors of why talks are breaking down with the Actors Guild. Granted, they haven't been on strike as long, so negotiations may not have been going on as long. But
right.
The sort of the things on the line for actors have to do with the fact that most union actors in SAG-AFTRA do not earn a living wage. And by that, I mean, and I quantify that as being like most of them don't even I think it's like 80 some odd % of actors don't even qualify for the health insurance benefits of the union. Like it's like they just don't clear enough money doing the job to pay for that stuff, to reach those limits. And like that's not necessarily the AMPTP's responsibility, but that's the negotiation. They're like, we want everyone, every background actor, all the extras, everybody who's actually like just sitting on set for hours at a time and then putting in the work, like to get what they need. Because it's not like they're just like show up, see and walk away. It's like everyone else in the crew. You show up, it's work. It's a long ass day of work, and then
people tend to think about like, oh, you know, like actors, right? People tend to think about like big name actors, right, who are obviously pretty set for life, right? Whereas like
that's such a
kind
small.
of the background actors, like
most actors,
they're not even going to even if they have a job that pays well enough, it's not like they have consistent job throughout the year either.
It's the ultimate gig economy,
and also like they aren't even getting royalties off some of their stuff because it's on streaming now. So
and
like that, I imagine that's one of the things to negotiate about. Like
that was another thing that came out of that was. The walls for that have been broken down a little bit because with the writer's strike negotiations, some of the stuff that came out of it was that streamers will have to disclose viewership numbers because writers will get extra money if things do particularly well. At first,
Right.
I mean, because Netflix sort of started the thing with streaming that you don't release numbers, and at first it was like a way to give everything equal footing. Like that's how it was sold. Everyone just kind of swallowed that pill, and now we're at a point where everybody's like, wait, what am I getting? Why? What am I getting paid for? And
yeah, right.
Given
Because you could be the show that's bringing people onto
Yeah.
the streaming service, and then it's just like, yep,
and
just as good as this other
you
one.
just have
It's
to
like,
take their word for it, and it gives you no leverage. It
Yeah.
gives you nothing to negotiate with. So I mean, those numbers are already going to be available to an extent. So I don't think it would be hard for the actors to latch onto that. I think where things are interesting is that at this point, AI, as it is, generative AI, I do not think is capable of writing a convincing script. I do not think that it can, because it is purely replicating information that other people have done and rearranging information other people have generated. I don't think that you're going to have a very cogent script writing apparatus if you solely rely on computers to ape the work everyone else has done. So I think that the AI protections, at the end of the day, it's like, writers have the ability to use AI tools to like generate stuff and then like work off of that, but it can never be credited. And that's not something that can be used against writers. They can use it if they would like. So I think at the end of the day, there's an understanding that it's going to be a long time before we have a robot that can write a moving piece of like literature and script writing. What AI
I don't know. This stuff goes so fast though, so it's like hard to, and it's the worst it's ever going to be right now.
Yeah, and well, here's the thing: we're not there yet with writing.
Right.
AI is much better at producing convincing imagery, not on its own, but if you have AI generated imagery and then also body scans of people to create digital doubles, there is a very large concern that digital technology is going to completely subsume the jobs of smaller actors, because it's like, hey, pay all the money we have to get like Robert Downey Jr. on set and then populate the back with CG people and no extras. And like just have AI record a line for one person, because if someone says a line, you have to pay them. Well, just have it done by a computer.
And of course, like the way AI works is just having this giant library of like, images or sounds that are created by people, by workers. So you got that whole issue of like you're profiting off the labor of someone without giving them money.
Yeah. It is theoretically possible
or in their case, their likeness.
Yeah, and it's theoretically possible to use an AI model on like ethically sourced, ethically trained stuff. But I mean, ethically sourcing things is not something the United States does particularly well in really any regard. So
really.
Yeah. So, but I mean, like
ethically,
even putting aside the core ethics with AI as a thing, which are troubling and fundamental to the technology at this point, the threats of this technology, I feel like, are more directly salient to individual actors than it is to maybe some individual writers. That's just my thought on it, and I'm wondering if because of that kind of dynamic that these talks may be a little more contentious or a little more difficult to swing. Because I mean, when you're talking about scaling writers for a show, you're talking about the difference between maybe like a writer with an AI behind them, as somebody might like, or a studio might like, versus like maybe 10 writers. When you're talking about populating a set full of extras, and we already see digital sets filled in with digital extras all the time, but like you're talking about the difference between 0 actors and like 100 actors for a single production. Like it just, the numbers grow so much faster. Like even just think about a random episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like how many people do you need to make the bar feel like a real place instead of an empty set? Like those are tangible numbers, and that's more actors on set than writers, and they're probably getting paid less than the writers. But like it's just, I think the scale of that is definitely part of this, and we haven't heard anything on that.
Well,
front.
It's a trickier thing with actors too, right? Because there is like more of a line in which it's acceptable. Like if you think about shit like Lord of the Rings, right? It's just like, oh yeah, obviously they've got all these procedurally generated like crowds, right? Like they, made new technology to make that happen, and it would not be financially feasible to actually hire people to be in those crowds, right? So it's just like, oh, there's some level to which we're willing to accept that, but once it goes too far. So I imagine it's a trickier thing of like, where does the line actually fall between it being kind of like okay for cost cutting measures and just like straight up removing low-level acting jobs
like a
from
lot
the
of
market at all.
Yeah, I think that boils down to a lot of the dialogue around AI use in general. Again, putting aside the fundamental ethical issues with how it sources its data and how it scrapes for data, but like just as a tool for generating information, assuming we get to a point where it's like ethically sustainable, it still becomes the question of like, is it replacing people, yada, yada, yada. And at the end of the day, that's always the talk when it comes to new technology. Like, uh-oh, we all type on our phones now. What's going to happen to cursive? Like, it's not always that trivial. But there's always a concern with new technology. Like, is something old going to go away? It's like, usually not entirely. Yeah. There might be a shift, but the best use of this is as a tool for people that know what they're doing. Because, like, to your point, in Lord of the Rings, those digital crowds are very convincing. I'm sure we have all seen movies where that same technology has been not convincing. And where digital backgrounds and crowds, cough, the Star Wars prequels, for another high-profile example, don't really cut the mustard. And it's like, the tools exist. You still need, at this point, skilled, organized, artistic people to execute with those tools. So I think the problem with the problem with these tools is not that they are going to transform how the technology works. I think the problem is that people want to try to use them to replace everything, when instead they should eventually just be streamlined and used as tools the way that everything else is used as tools. And again, that is purely contingent on maintaining quality ethical standards at the fundamental level of this technology, which is currently not a fucking thing. So even
if we do get to the point where like the data being scraped is ethically sourced, because this technology requires a ton of data to work, only the biggest studios would ever be able to make use of it. So
yeah, it would by making it ethical. You aren't just making it happy-go-lucky. Ooh, I can do this without feeling guilty. You are also ensuring that the only way for it to be useful is to like still put in the artistic work. You can't just say, let me look up every picture of Chowder that I find on the internet. You're going to say, I need to pay Chowder for a photography session, and then make sure that I am like licensing all this stuff and paying him reasonably for every use of this thing later. Like that's the tool.
Not
it could end up being.
Break into his house while he sleeps.
It's true. This is true, but that would be unethical.
Or if you happen to already have the rights to a ton of photographs of Chowder from way back when that you can then just use.
And this is where I think things could potentially be breaking down, is because the Actors Guild is hyper aware that these are the dynamics at play, and that studios are going to say the things I just said as an argument for like, hey, but we just want to do it, right? Can we just do it because it'll be easier and cheaper? But then Chowder's point supersedes all of that. And I think that is what these negotiations could be breaking down over, at least in part. That is my speculation, but this is sort of a make or break week in terms of that. Actors have not been able to talk about projects, record stuff, do things for the most part. So it's just, we're seeing a lot of things get pushed further and further down the line in terms of releases. And I mean, economically speaking, in the United States, we keep putting out financial reports that are like, this is some of the best GDP growth ever. And yet so many people are like out of work right now. Yet, it's kind of bananas.
And yet like the highest like poverty rates ever as well.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
It's like we're bragging about the wrong things here. That actually leads me to the other thing I wanted to talk about, which is something that cropped up yesterday, very suddenly and very surprisingly. We've talked at length about layoffs in the entertainment industry, particularly in the video game and technology industries. It's been pretty nasty this year. Last year, beginning of 2022, we talked about how Sony was acquiring Bungie, the developer of Destiny, and it was a weird deal because Sony wasn't getting any exclusivity rights to Bungie's franchises. They were basically bringing Bungie on because Bungie was so skilled at making a live service game. And Sony's like, we want to be better at that. So let's do that. It was a $3.6 billion deal, and $1.2 billion of it was for employee retention. And Bungie said to the employees that the Sony acquisition is not going to lead to any restructuring or layoffs. So, given that I've just set that context, can you guess what happened yesterday morning?
Oh, no.
Is it layoffs?
Bungie
Restructuring and layoffs.
Restructuring and layoffs, and this is weird for a number of reasons. I know that I'm like more familiar with Bungie than you guys, so I have like my own pretty close perspective, given how much I deal with Destiny, personally and professionally. But this is weird because this is the last high-profile firing from this company was back in 2014. There was a big structural disagreement over how Destiny was going to proceed. Activision did some stuff, and their composer, Marty O'Donnell, who did all the music for Halo, like one of the few like name-recognized celebrities from the developer, was fired. And everyone was like, why are you firing one of the people we like the most? And it's like, well, we have reasons, and I'm not going to get into that, but like it's been 10 years since anything like that happened. As of this morning, we know that they've let go most of their community-facing employees, several community managers, social media team members, a handful of like creatives and engineers, but also the composer that worked with Marty O'Donnell on Halo and has been on Destiny for the past 10 years is now gone, as are all the people that worked with him and produced the tracks that people like actually knew by name and would go. So like every single person that is known by the community, except like game directors, every high profile member of this company is like gone.
They all just spontaneously, randomly, coincidentally decided to retire at the same time. It has nothing to do with the merger.
Socials are flooded.
I want to believe in like some bizarre ass conspiracy theory where it's all connected to Marty O'Donnell, like anyone he's ever talked to, anyone he's ever made eye contact with.
Yeah.
But if they're getting expunged, we will remove every inch of Marty O'Donnell from our company.
Yeah, but it's just
the fucking
it's so...
Halo chant is actually like subliminal messaging that like activates sleeper agents, and we got to get rid of everyone who's.
It's actually strangely close to some of the plot lines that have happened in Destiny. But it's like this is a big game, and it's a big game. It's had a rocky year because its last expansion was not great. I think I've talked about that here. I did not like Lightfall very much, and it's sort of created some weird issues with like just community confidence, and the last few updates have been good and like getting better, and this last one was like really cool, but this feels sort of out of the blue. It's like primarily high profile employees. For a live service game, you would kind of think that the people that help you engage with your community are pretty important compared to maybe like a one and done, here's your Spider-Man game, we'll be back in 5 years. This is something that's putting out updates weekly for 10 years straight. Communicating with people is pretty important, and like so many people have disappeared, and the game itself, its next expansion, its like final expansion, quote unquote, was delayed by 4 months. That part technically hasn't been confirmed by Bungie yet, but as people started saying like stuff's happening at Bungie, Jason Schreier, our good old buddy Jason Schreier, put out a report saying like these are all the things I've been hearing: layoffs, yada, delays. Here we go. So whatever is happening, a lot of people speculating on the outside, including former employees of Bungie, are saying like this sounds like a familiar brand of mismanagement that the company has exhibited before. So at this point, we don't even know, like, is this Sony like actually flexing their muscle over Bungie, or did Bungie just fuck something up with the numbers? But in a year full of layoffs, like a company that secured over $1 billion in funding,
we were only supposed to lay off one person, not 1,000.
Oh no! Weirdest rounding error ever. I mean, like, again, it was very high profile, the deal they secured to specifically avoid exactly this. And not only is it happening, it's happening suddenly, and it's happening to the people that you would least expect it to happen to. And it's just a weird vibe. The Destiny community itself is sort of like, we're all on copium at the moment trying to figure out what's going on. But like in terms of layoffs this year, this is one of the strangest because we still don't have numbers. We don't even have confirmation of the game delay, but something's going on at this pretty high profile company. And it's just to cap off a year of layoffs in tech and gaming, still going strong. So yeah, I guess I'm not bringing the highest vibes this month, but those are my only two real stories. Nice. How about Jin's boys? What you got?
All right.
Well, I've got some.
Yeah,
mine are quick and fairly unimportant.
Story of my life.
You guys like voting?
I do it.
Quick and fairly unimportant. Yeah. Well, here's some inconsequential pieces of voting that have happened this month. We had another Minecraft mob vote for the next mob that's going to be introduced in the new update of Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
The three mobs that were shown off were the crab, the penguin, and the armadillo, all of which had little gimmicks and shit like that. The armadillo won, so that's going to be a mob in the next.
Wasn't there some shit about people getting really sick of the mob voting process?
Yeah. There was like a bunch of on the stream itself. There was a bunch of people that like just spamming stop the mob vote because it like basically a lot of people in the community don't like the idea of like the developers showing off three like interesting concepts and then whichever one wins is the one that gets made and then the other two just get shelved, even if like, you know, like if there were still better concepts than some of the things that actually do make it into the game because they're, you know, weren't part of the mob vote. And that's been kind of just boiling over for a while, like ever since they started doing the mob votes, because there are some, you know, cool designs that just never get to see the light of day because of that. That being said, there have been some designs that have lost their mob votes that do end up being in the game eventually. Like, I guess technically it wasn't. There was like the vote a few years ago for like which biome should get an update next. I don't remember what won, but one of them was the swamps and frogs, and like frogs were a part of that, and that was not the one that won, but that did end up happening. So it's not like it's, you know, but in that case, it was a vote for which biome was getting an update, which is kind of just inevitable, rather than like which new like mobs are being added to the game. So that's a slight difference there, but you know, the frog was part of a mob vote and lost and is now in the game. So it's like, it's not, you know.
Yeah. But from what I understand, more often than not, it just goes into the vault, never to be seen again.
Yeah. Fucking rip to the copper golem. That's what I voted for last time. And that was the LA was the thing that won in that vote.
I think it was like even Marvel Snap had a vote recently for like, hey, which card do you want to celebrate the 1-year anniversary or whatever? And everyone got that card for free. They're still selling the other cards as like you can like they're still in the game, they're just not free. And it's like I understand it's different when you're talking about a mob behavior that takes some actual like programming and serious QA, so it's a bigger financial lift, but...
And it's like I don't know, I feel like probably the even ground on that, or the middle ground on that, is things like the biome thing, right? Because they weren't being like, oh, which of these biomes is going to get an update, and then the other ones we're never going to touch again, right? It's like, which one gets an update next, you know? Which like that's what makes more sense, because that's like, you know, the card thing of like, oh, which one of these you get for free, but the other ones you can still buy, is sort of just like, okay, so if you're going to get all three of them, it's kind of doesn't matter, right? Because you're going to be buying two cards either way. Whereas like the flip side of that is like what people are complaining about with the mob vote is just like, no, these are all cool ideas. Why should two of them be shelved forever? Whereas the biome thing, I think, is a good middle ground between like, oh, you'll get all of it. It's just what's coming sooner, you know?
Yeah. No, I feel that.
But yeah, anyway, the armadillo is what I voted for, so I was happy about the result of that regardless.
Hashtag not my armadillo.
Yeah, I think the gimmick with that is they drop like pieces of like chutes or something similar to how turtles do in Minecraft, and then you can use those pieces to craft armor for wolves, which I think is pretty chill. So that's a cool feature that the armadillos will have. But that was part of the Minecraft Live for this year. But that was that vote. And then another vote that is currently happening, which is not actually resolved yet, is the Strong Museum of Play, located in Rochester, New York. Every year they do an inductee into the National Toy Hall of Fame. And this year, because I think it's because it's the 25th anniversary of the Toy Hall of Fame, they're including a separate category for five, for people to actually vote on, including 5 toys that have been sort of nominated in past years but not actually chosen, because it's not usually done via a vote. It's like, oh, there's several things that are nominated and then there's like a committee that picks it. So this is kind of like highlighting a lot of, of toys that have been on the list several times but have never been the ones that have actually been picked. And the things on that list are the Fisher Price corn popper, which I did not know the name of, but
that doesn't sound like a Fisher Price toy, if I'm being honest.
No, it's the you'd recognize it if you saw it. The white thing with the blue handle and the blue stick and the red handle that you roll along, and it makes it go like pop 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 pop.
I'm gonna Google.
You push it around like a vacuum cleaner.
The name sounds suspect.
Yes. Well, Google it. You'll know exactly. You'll immediately
Googling
recognize what that is. That's one of the things. My Little Pony is another one.
Oh, yeah.
Pez, pogo sticks, and Transformers. The reason that I'm talking about it at all. So the voting for that is closed. Yeah, right. That's bizarre. Apparently they've been nominated like several times but have not ever been the things selected.
Yeah.
There's other things, like when you see the things that are selected, you're like, oh, okay, right. Like Lego, or like things that are like the Slinky, I'm pretty sure is on the Hall of Fame, is in the Hall of Fame.
Fine.
But the voting for that closed on October 24th, and this article that I'm reading just says that the winner will be announced in September, or not September, in November, but I'm not entirely sure when. So,
it's a big day for you,
maybe
Jeff.
by the time this comes out.
Could be a big day for you.
Unlikely. Sure. I don't know like what it matters really. I mean, I like the Strong Museum of Play. I've been there a few times because I lived in Rochester for a while, but I always did think when I went there, I was like, this museum has a very sad collection of Transformers. There was like 4.
Is this your ultimate goal, is to like crawl through academia and then reach the point where you can be like, I would like to be your like Transformer steward and make sure you always have
exactly
adequate Transformers displays, collections. You can get a wax statue of John Cena in there.
So again, it's just kind of like I don't know. It's just for fun, I guess, to have things in the Toy Hall of Fame. I don't know if that actually would make any practical difference to the current Transformers brand or whatever. But, it'd be a nice thing to do in time for the 40th anniversary of the brand. But, like I said, not important or consequential, either of those things, really. But,
honestly,
those are really the only stories I have to talk about this month. Not a lot happened.
That was a little palate cleanser for me after saying 2 pretty upsetting things. So, Chatter, do you want to bring my mood back down? Because I'm assuming you got some bad news. I'm just assuming. I have no idea what you're going to talk about.
Actually, we're running low on time, so I'm gonna cut it down to just 2 stories.
Okay.
The first one happened today, in fact. So Delta Rune had a new newsletter, right? Like Toby Fox does these newsletters to like give updates on like how development on Delta Rune is going, right? And there's a lot of little bits of news, but I think the big one is the release plan for Delta Rune, right? Because originally the plan after Chapter 1 was released for free was that 2 to 7 would get all released at once, but then the COVID pandemic happened, and Toby Fox decided, let's give everyone a little break from that by releasing Chapter 2 out for free, and with that he also announced that the plan has changed to be, I'm going to release Chapters 3 to 5 at once for a paid price, and then 6 and 7 come later on.
That's cool.
But in today's newsletter, it's announced that changed again. instead we're gonna release 3 and 4 together, and 5 is gonna come down the line along with 6 and 7 at a later point. And the reasoning for this is because like 3 and 4 are most of the way done, but 5 has a long way to go. So that's why that's happening. And
That makes sense.
it's
Check
so
out.
it's an interesting thing, but importantly, it means that we're gonna get another update to Delta Rune sooner, which is nice because how many years has it been since Chapter 2? I believe it released in 2021, so
Yeah.
it's been a few years.
When did you have us play it?
And,
It had to be
you
in the
know,
past
everyone-
year.
Yeah, I believe it was
I don't know if
last
that
year
was in the past
I
year.
had you guys.
I played it on my Steam Deck, which I got less than a year and a half ago, so it would have had to have been fairly recent.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it was
before
like
we
a year
started
ago.
doing online, or not online,
Yeah.
Like video
on
stuff?
YouTube,
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay.
you know,
because that was when we were still doing CGP rather
Yeah.
than just CPP.
yeah, it's just like you can only conspiracy theorize about so much when you got only 2 chapters. So it'll be nice to have 2 more to
Oh
go
my god.
ham on.
That's nice. Yeah, and
The,
chapter 2 was sizable, so 3 and 4 would be a nice chunk.
Yeah, no, it really would. Yeah, and like chapter 1, the change from chapter 1 to chapter 2, it's like, wow, that's a big improvement. So I kind of hope they keep going in that trajectory, and 3 and 4 are gonna be super dope. And for my second piece of news, like on October 13th,
That was my birthday.
It was.
and
never
animation was released. An
my
animation
last
was
one.
released called The Amazing Digital Circus. It was a pilot for what they hope to be a series. It's being directed by Gooseworks, who has done a few animated shorts like Run Mo Run, and
Oh, I didn't realize
And
it was
has,
the
like-
same people that did the Runmo video. That was a good one too.
yeah, exactly. So, and like, it's already like super popular as of like this recording. It has 50 million views, over 50 million views, and it's like
That's wild.
it's a really good. Yeah, no, it's a really good pilot. It's a CGI animation about like this digital scape that like a bunch of people are trapped in, and it's simultaneously really funny, really dark. It's got like this existential horror vibe to it, all wrapped up in like an aesthetic you wouldn't that wouldn't be unfamiliar in like something like an N64 game or a PlayStation 1 game.
Yeah.
It's very good. And like from what I've read, it's part of the inspiration for it is I have no mouth and I must scream, which is very interesting considering the bright, cartoony, very wacky vibes. But it does make sense because it is about a bunch of people trapped in a machine being slowly tortured into insanity. So, like,
Aren't we all?
I mean, story of our lives, right? Being trapped by a vindictive machine, And like, I want to talk about it because it's a really good pilot, and they're trying to be able to fund a full season of this by, it looks like trying to make enough money that they can like release it all online. It's not like they're trying to get a studio, get on TV or something. It seems so.
Yeah, that's
I'm
awesome.
looking forward to more of that.
now.
Yeah,
But
pretty much, really. But yeah, that's what I want to talk about. There's a few more things I would have wanted to talk about, but
I mean, we could
running
really, we could really quick. I know I'm responsible for a lot of the delays here, both food and technically related. But like, I mean, we could
A
throw
lot
to
of
the fact that like Marvel Studios TV for Disney Plus has mostly been structuring their writers' rooms like movies, where they just have an executive producer overseeing everything. They're actually going to switch to having a showrunner, a head writer, lead a room of writers to write the TV show the way that writers would do. which would
Yeah.
probably
Oh,
explain.
hopefully it results in better shows because
Yeah.
it's been very mixed with the.
Yeah, I think.
Well, structuring it to be more like movies is not all that exciting either, considering
Well, that's
a lot of the movies haven't been good either.
that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But I mean, but
We'll see how that
specifically,
goes.
like, listen, Ant-Man Quantumania was, I think, a very bad movie for a lot of reasons. Partially because it was written by a Rick and Morty alum, and it kind of feels like the structure of a Rick and Morty episode just dragged out to 2.5 hours or 2 hours. Like,
Yikes.
it doesn't sustain the pace the way a movie needs to. Conversely, shows like Obi-Wan and even better ones like Miss Marvel, I think, are like good ideas that are movies, again, stretched out in a way that they should not be. So I think these conventions have some merit, and it will be nice to see what happens when these conventions are maybe applied to these shows. Because, I mean, Loki season 2 is fun, but I'm seeing the seams in the way it's put together, and I'm just like, it's better, but it's got the cracks. But this led to something, Chatter, I think you were going to mention, which was the Daredevil Born Again show, which had already undergone some shots, is basically being like scrapped and retooled entirely with this new studio restructuring. So like a whole lot more to say about what the hell's going on at Disney. Like, Bungie is not the only company up to some fucky shit right now. So but that's
Disney's never not up to some fucky shit though.
Yeah, it's very strange. But I think on that note, to respect Chatter's time, let's see if we can button this up. So with all those stories under our belt, let's head into the editor's room and decide what's the top story for the month. It's a lighter month here in October, but if we had to pick one piece of news to share with people at parties where you inevitably speak to no one and instead hide upstairs, what would you say is the most important? I'm not sure I know what my nomination is yet.
Well, the Minecraft mob vote, obviously. I have no idea.
I mean,
I don't know. Something sad.
I mean, mine would go.
Probably.
Mine would go to the Amazing Digital Circus mine would go to your cat, Colin. But
What about my cat?
Your
Do you
cat
like
looks.
my cat?
Your cat looks stoned and suspicious.
anyway,
we all?
I would say the Amazing Digital Circus. It's a new show.
Mhm.
It's really interesting. It's indie animation, so like they have the freedom to do cool stuff.
Indianimation as opposed to Wisconsinmation.
Shut the fuck up.
Exactly.
Honestly, you know what? I have no attachments to the source material, but the premise, the runaway success of it so far, is enough to suck me in. I think the SAG stuff is going to keep on sagging until we learn a little bit more. The Bungie stuff is still developing. I think Transformers are already doing pretty good for themselves. I don't know that they need the vote to succeed.
That's next month's story. Once they get selected.
Okay, my bad. I think I'll join you on that. I think in an era where we're starting to see a lot of creatives struggle, perhaps in a more systemic way than usual, with all these layoffs, with new technologies, with all these troubled negotiations. It's nice to see somebody just succeeding outside of that system and saying like, hey, let's do a thing and making it happen. I'm on board.
Also, it's pretty spooky, and we're recording on Halloween, so.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So
Existential
horror. Chatter. So name of that series and where we can find the info on it one more time.
The series is called The Amazing Digital Circus. You can find the pilot on YouTube. The channel it's on is called Glitch, Glitch, all capitals. If you type in The Amazing Digital Circus, you should probably get it. So
that's our top story for the month. Just keep in mind that a lot of terrible things are still happening, but they haven't resolved yet. So we're gonna go watch this instead. That's really all I've got for now. That's all we're gonna do. So I have been Colin. You can. I'm tired. Just watch this. There's more of this podcast. Throw it on. Just keep watching this. That's it. I'm good.
Yeah. Hi, I'm
Jeff.
Shemul.
You motherfucker. Dude, it's just an order. Yeah, right? Why do you do this every time?
He's trying to upset the order. Can you blame him?
Yeah. I'm Jeff. You can find me on Instagram in 2 different places. Things I wish existed with a dot between each word for art stuff, and toys and art with a dot between each word in N, the letter N, for toy related things. And also I do a YouTube channel where I do toy reviews. That's Alchemist Prime Reviews, and that's me.
Hi, I'm Timul, or Chatter, whichever you prefer. You can find me on a number of social media sites now. You can find me on Tumblr. You can find me on Co-host. You can find me on a few other places. I don't feel like
finally
listing
jump
them
off?
up.
Did you finally jump off Twitter/X?
I've finally jumped off. Yeah, I mean,
Hell yeah.
you know.
Fanship.
So, and you can find us on our sister podcast, Dice Populi. And for that, that'll be all. I kind of do need to get going.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so
Ciao.
much, folks. We'll have a good one. Bye.
Durr.
We'll be back next month with more geek news. Where's the stop button?